Do anything fun over the break?
Went to Illinois for 2 days.
Sweet. I've got you. Now you got 5.
You know, it's a new year. Trying to ruin your new year.
Oh. I saw that. Okay.
Jody's going to make a presentation. 209 to 11 was 5th. Was supposed to be continued to this meeting, but nobody gave me a stuff summary, so it's not on there.
Be careful what you say.
So, but our inspector's out anyways. He's having surgery, so they don't even know what the progress is right now.
Who's that?
Doug, or not Doug. Phil. Sorry, Phil. But she's going to get up tonight and make a presentation on it.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's what you tell us to do, talk into the microphone.
Yeah. Oh.
We got to throw it somewhere, dude. Go.
Good evening. It is 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we're going to start tonight with the Ottumwa Board of Health for the city. So let's turn our cell phones to silent or vibrate. Then let's please all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before Amanda takes the roll, I want to wish everybody on behalf of the city, excuse me, Happy New Year and welcome Holly Berg as our newest council person. Now you could take the roll, please.
Councilmember Berg.
Here.
Councilmember Dalby.
Here.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Councilmember Strebe.
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Approve the minutes for meeting number 9 on December 19th, 2017 is presented. Recommendation, approve the minutes.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the time, place, and date set to consider condemnation of the structures on the lot located at 220 Ottumwa Street. I received no objections on this item.
Okay. I'd like to welcome back Jody Gates to the podium. So Jody, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. This is 220 Ottumwa Street. It was placarded March 17th of 2017, and it was placarded due to someone living in the house without utilities, and there was poor sanitation and dilapidation of the structure. The owner of the house has not been able to make the necessary repairs, and he's tried to sell the house, but he hasn't been able to do that either. Therefore, at this time, staff is recommending condemnation.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to address the issue, this is the time to step to the microphone. Would you give us your name and address, please?
Silverthorne, Alice Nicholson. I live at 424 North Court.
Go ahead.
This is my ex-husband's house. He is currently residing somewhere else. I got him out of this house about the time that it got yellow carded. He has been really sick, in and out of the hospital for probably since April, May, with infections, and he has complications due to cancer he had 7 years ago. So he has recently actually just been to the hospital today, and they wanted to admit him, but he refused. So I've been trying to sell the house on his behalf. We had a buyer that fell through because they have a business. They lost, had a burglary, lost a bunch of money and merchandise, and so they had to back out of the deal. So I've been working on trying to find another buyer for it. someone who can take the headache from him, because basically he's still paying on it. He still has $15,000 to pay on the property before it's paid off. And he is not going to be able to probably do anything with it ever again. His health has just deteriorated that bad. As far as trying to clean it up and everything, of course, like with his health, he can't do anything. I can't do anything. I work 60+ hours a week. Have 5 kids I'm raising. So I have wanted see if we can get it delayed a little bit, because I want to try to get somebody in there to get his stuff out. He's got a lot of personal things in there, personal items in there that need to be gotten out. As a matter of fact, I want to say April or May, somebody had broken in and stolen some of his personal items, including some checks, and they wrote some bad checks on his account. So there's items in there like that that need to be gotten out before anything else were to happen. And I don't have the money right now to do anything about it, but I'm hoping, with income tax, that I can go ahead and pay somebody to just come in and clear it out, and either get it sold as is, because I'm just looking to pay off his loan for him. It's only 15 grand. Property's been assessed at much more than that a long time ago, which when he bought it was only, I want to say 24 is what the bank gave him the loan on. But I want to just get him out from underneath it, and I just need a little time to do it, because I just found out about all this here last month. I didn't know he was getting any information about this, any notices in the mail, anything like that. I know that they said that they were sending stuff to me, but I had moved clear back in April, and post office only forwards stuff for a couple months before they stopped pretty much forwarding everything. So if they were sending it to my old address that they had on record, I wasn't getting any of it.
Okay.
So that was kind of my plan for it. But I do need a little more time just to get things arranged for him, since I'm just kind of walking into this situation and trying to help him out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anyone else who wants to address the council? If not, I entertain a motion to close the public portion.
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Condemn the structures located at 220 Ottumwa Street, order prompt demolition, removal, and leveling of the lot, and direct all costs attendant to such actions, including administrative costs, to be assessed against property taxes and/or collected from the owner or owners thereof. Recommendation: approve the condemnation of the structures located at 220 Ottumwa Street.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented. Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question for Jody. It says prompt demolition, and given the comments we just heard, what does that mean? And in these cases, are the owners usually given an opportunity to have the time to remove their personal items and get those types of things out of there?
We do send them notice to that they need to remove their personal items. Usually we start with 30 days, although when I was speaking with Silverthorne, she indicated that she didn't think that that would be enough time for them. So we could negotiate a time frame that is reasonable for the city, but also would be hopefully reasonable for her to be able to remove his items. And then prompt demolition, I mean, that generally for us means that we'll try to have the house demolished in the next 90 to 120 days.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, you're on a question. Jody, in your opinion, if someone, let's just say someone were to buy this thing before we got it down, is it rehabable? Is it able to be reconditioned, or is it beyond that point?
Well, I've said before that I think you put enough money into something, you can rehab anything. I think this house would take a great deal to rehabilitate.
What would happen if somebody, say we went ahead and approved this, and then, within a week or two, the owners, and this goes for any house that comes before the Board of Health, happen to have a buyer? I mean, does that stop the process, or do we have to come back and rescind this resolution, or how does that work? If that's just a hypothetical, but what would happen if that were the case?
If someone bought this house in the next week after the condemnation, then we would want to sit down with them and find out what their plans were, how quickly they thought they could repair it, if they had the financial means to do that, and if in fact their bank indicated that they did, and we thought that the house could be rehabilitated, within a reasonable period of time, we'd probably bring it back to the Board of Health to ask for a rescinding of the condemnation.
One more quick question. How long has this been placarded, this house?
Since March of last year.
March of last year? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have a couple.
Councilman Rowe, go ahead.
Was there any communication between you and the owner of the property between the time of condemnation and now?
The owner, Mr. Nicholson, contacted us and told us that basically the same things that Silverthorne has said, that he's trying to sell it, hasn't been successful. And he talked again about his ill health, and he wasn't going to be able to do the work himself.
Okay. And second question, in your opinion, the amount of money that it would take to rehab the house to the point where it wouldn't be under condemned status, is that beyond the fair market value of that for the area that it's in?
I don't know that positively, but I think that it could take over $30,000 or $40,000, and that's after you get all the junk out of it. And I don't know the condition of the foundation or other structural components of the house, but it's a sizable house, so it's not going to be cheap to rehab.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. If I understood the lady right, they owe $15,000 on it. I'm not a real estate expert, but just by looking at the pictures, I think she's going to be extremely lucky to get a buyer for this, because I'm assuming she's going to have to pay the bank off. So if we do give any time, my opinion, it should be a very short period of time to get his stuff out of there and then proceed on.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay, take the roll, please.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Any other business for the Board of Health, Jody?
I do have one update. This is regarding the 209-211 West 5th. It was to come back to the Board of Health this evening, and we don't have a status update of this house, other than the owner has not been able to get utilities connected to it so that they can make sure that the furnace is functioning and the electrical is working. And so we ask that you go ahead and continue this. And I would ask that you continue it till the first council meeting in February so that they can get the work done that they need to get done. They've continued to work on the house. We've seen evidence of it just from the outside. Our inspector was up there. But it's hard to say with the weather the way it is, if it could take them, another week or 2 weeks to just get the utilities connected. And they have to do that before they can proceed with any sort of painting or any work like that.
Well, let's just consider this update, and then you can bring a recommendation to us at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Health.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
5:44. Thank you. Let's move now to the regularly scheduled city council meeting, and please take the roll for that.
Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Councilmember Dalby?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Councilmember Strebe?
Here.
Mayor Lazio?
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 42 on December 19th, 2017 is presented. Appoint Holly Berg as council liaison to the Bridgeview Board of Directors effective January 2nd, 2018. Appointment of Jerry Lemuse to the position of probationary firefighter. Resolution number 4, 2018, accepting the work as final and complete for the Water Pollution Control Facility Secondary Anaerobic Digester Interior Piping Project. Resolution number 9, 2018, accepting the work as final and complete for the Water Pollution Control Facility Secondary Digester Piping Project. Beer and/or liquor applications for Recovery Room, 1805 West 2nd Street with outdoor service area. The Keg, 622 Church Street with outdoor service area. Chills and Thrills, 312 East Main Street. Hy-Vee Wine and Spirits, 2453 North Court Street. All applications pending final inspections.
Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, item C, we need approval for tonight's further agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Thank you, Mark.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Item D on our agenda is a report from city officers, boards, commissions, and committees. And item number 1, I'm just going to mention, we do have a outstanding firefighter, Bill Trout, who's going to be retiring in January. January 31st is his final day. And I think it's appropriate that we recognize him at either our next meeting or the first meeting in February, whatever the chief can work out with him and his attendance. So just make you aware of that. Okay. Now I'd like to turn it over to Andy Morris to give us an update on some of the activities he's been involved with.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The items you see listed on the agenda, I have additional one to add. The very first item you see are budget meetings, staff budget meetings. Pardon me. Those will begin next Monday. So Monday, the finance department will be meeting with the various departments to discuss the budget. In addition to that, I would just point out to council, you received an email from myself, Finance Director Bob Jay, and I put this together, but that email went out to everyone on City Council denoting some of the financial challenges and opportunities we have going forward. If the news media would like a copy of that, I'd be happy to provide. The next item you see are actually items 3 and 4 are combinations of the website presentations. There's a certain amount of money, approximately $50,000, that's set aside in the general fund budget to create, update, enhance the city's existing website, which by all accounts is in not very good condition. What I've tried to do is keep this as open and transparent as possible. And in that spirit, you will note that I've scheduled meetings, presentations I should say, and these would be a special meeting format. One for a week from this evening and the other one on the 23rd, a week from the second meeting in regular meeting council would have in the month of January. Hill Productions and then Civic Plus is the second one, the second item that's listed in terms of the company that would give us a presentation. I want as much feedback from council and staff as to what the website might look like in its final form. In addition, another entity I've corresponded with and thought about possibly adding to the agenda if it's suitable would be, again, on the 23rd. You see where Civic Plus, their website presentation will be on the 23rd. Neapolitan Labs out of Ankeny, Iowa is another company that I've had some correspondence with who would likely like to put them on the STIP and add them to that particular date. I want to get input from council and obviously staff as well, and hopefully we can even have some actual presentations from these companies so you can see what it looks like. I want council to be comfortable with that before we bring forth a contract that this is the company that, you know, a committee of 5 people have selected. I don't want it operated like that, but we'll be as open and transparent as that as possible. Share with me your thoughts, obviously, during and after those presentations. The next one you see, city-sponsored projects. This was an item that was brought up by Councilman Rowe at a meeting, I believe, about a month and a half ago regarding reimbursement for city expenses we incur when events like, say, RAGBRAI or the Fly Iowa event come to town. Maria Brunell is a staff associate attorney on staff at Alders Cooney. I've corresponded with her a great deal. She's put together a pretty good policy. It needs some tweaking on it because there are references about the city providing money, and this is not in the sense of the city providing money, it's the city being reimbursed for certain expenses. So I started to clean that up today. I will get that out the door to her probably fairly easy tomorrow. The last item, and it is not listed here on the report that's in front of you, but you may recall at the meeting we had last month on the 19th, I discussed Chief Miller, his presentation before us to talk about fireworks and also EMS. A report will be generated on that. Mayor, if it pleases the council, I would ask you to ask Chief Miller to step forward at this time.
We'll recognize Chief Tony Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This last year, I've been doing a lot of investigation, evaluation on an EMS program here in Ottumwa and what the Ottumwa Hospital does. I've met with Urbandale Fire Department, Fort Madison Fire Department, Fort Dodge Fire Department, Keokuk Fire Department, a bunch of other departments. Basically, it's going to boil down to this. The startup costs, if the city of Ottumwa would ever take over the EMS services that the Ottumwa Hospital currently does, the startup costs are going to be very, very high. And I mean really high, probably $1 million plus. From what I get from meeting with all these people, right now with what the Ottumwa Regional pays to the city in tax money, we would never even come close to that. This was a learning experience. I'm glad I did it because I did a lot of research on this. The only thing that would change, in my opinion, on this whole situation, and it just happened in Sioux City yesterday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, Sioux City Fire Department just took over the ambulance service, which 4 months ago, the private service said that beginning in January, we're going to be out of the business. So Sioux City Fire Department took that over. In the next 3 or 4 months, I'm going to get a hold of their chief over there and see how that's going, just out of curiosity. But in my opinion on this situation, the only way that it'd be profitable for the city to take this over is if Ottumwa Regional would walk away from it, which is what happened in Sioux City. I don't see that happening anytime in the very near future.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just point to that, and for those of us that took that trip to Fort Dodge a couple of months ago, and Chief and I have talked about this, as he said, absent the ability of the city to have some exertion of control over the transports, and that's certainly not something we're trying to steal or take away. It's about enhancing services, but certainly in that environment, we have a good working relationship with the hospital. But the comment that the chief and I shared last night was, we'll put together a report and set forth the reasons why staff is recommending we not pursue it at this time. Obviously, in the future, if there wants to be a different council, different set of personnel, that's something they might want to consider. But at this time, that's not something that staff is going to recommend we move forward on.
Okay, very good.
I do want to make one more point on this. Our relationship with the Ottumwa Regional is outstanding. I mean, we go to the calls, they go to the calls. It's a very, very good working relationship, and we want to keep that.
Good.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, is there any way possible, I know you guys do a lot of work on this, a lot of heavy lifting. Is there any way that the city of Ottumwa could get a fee from that?
Skip, the best way I can answer that is the last administration that went to the Ottumwa Regional and asked if they would pay a small fee. I can't tell you what the fee was because I don't know. That was way before my time in this position. And at the time, the Ottumwa Regional said, no, we have no interest in doing that. Can we approach the Ottumwa Regional to see if they would offer something? I suppose we could talk to them. I don't know what they would do. I really don't know what they would do.
Now, to interject, just very briefly, that was about 10 years ago, and I was part of that excursion then. And the difficulty was not only the fee, but trying to, quite frankly, identify how one would be reimbursed.
Well, it's obvious to me that the fire department is on a lot of these medical calls, in some cases way ahead of the ambulance. So that's a plus for our citizens. And I don't know, I just somehow feel that we should get a little something out of that, but that's just my opinion.
I got a comment.
Councilman Delby?
I think it's good, though, coming back with this report. I think it's proactive of the city, though, to start talking about these issues and start looking at different ways to to fund some of our budget shortfalls coming up, because we're simply in an age where we're going to have more and more come down the line. So I think it was totally appropriate and well done by yourself and inviting, several council members to come and listen in on those presentations. Going back to Sioux City, you said they, at 8 o'clock the other morning, just found out
Yesterday
they're
morning.
gonna- yeah. Okay. So being kind of proactive or trying to be proactive, if a case would happen like that here, and say the hospital was, wanting to give up their transport services, or they got sold, or something else happened, because we know that's happened once. Is that expense of $1 million? How does that, are we still looking at having to do that? Or is it less because we buy ambulances, or how does that all work?
Well, I tell you, Matt, we went to Fort Dodge, and Fort Dodge about 3 years ago, they took over the ambulance service, kind of took it over. And they gave a very good presentation exactly how they went about doing it, where they bought their used ambulances at, what the classes their fire guys had to take, everything that did anything to do with what they did. And they still run a service up there. I pretty much know exactly what it takes to get a service going, if that ever come our way.
Sure. But my question was, if it does, say out of the blue, are we still gonna have to upfront a bunch of money to get, would we, try to, what do they do in hospitals like that on other cities? Has there been a situation where a hospital goes out of business and then it's just left to the city to?
That has happened in Mason City. That happened many, many years ago. And basically what you have to do is you have to be proactive on this and realize if that ever comes into play, what are your expenses going to be? You're going to have to buy used ambulances. What are your other expenses going to be? Is that something the cities want to bond for? But we know what the cost would be.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your work on it and entertaining that notion. It's good to have those conversations. You never know what can happen in this time, day and age. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Chief. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting or whenever you work out your time with, you're going to do the fireworks?
You want me to do the fireworks right now? We had the fireworks meeting with the state on December the 9th. And I was very discouraged when I walked away from that meeting, because I'd been to the meeting prior to that in September. And what they basically did is they've taken the feet out of the cities and the counties on everything, and I mean everything. They made it less safe. They used to be where the minors could not sell, they could not purchase, they could not transport. That's been wiped away. The inspections that they used to do, they're going to waive them. The state fire marshal will have the right to waive them inspections if he feels it's necessary to waive them. There's nothing the cities can do. The zoning laws, there's the zoning laws, whatever zoning laws the city has, they said that they're not valid. Any decision about inspect fireworks will come right out of the state fire marshal's office, and the local cities and counties will have not the right to do anything. Barb Edmondson was an attorney for the state. I point blank asked her a question. Barb, there's about 15 cities that have already opted out of shooting fireworks. There's 5 or 6 more cities that are looking at opting out. Tell me what the law says. Do they have the option of opting out? I don't mean selling, because selling's a dead issue. They're going to sell fireworks, and that's how it is. But to be able to shoot off fireworks, where's that going to end up? And she really didn't give me an answer that made a lot of sense, and she never answered the question. So then I asked the state fire marshal, Dan Wood, the exact same question. Dan, 15 cities have already opted out. 5 or 6 more want to opt out. Where's this going to go? I mean, what's the city's option here? And he said, what's going to happen is there'll be a fireworks company is going to sue a city for not being allowed to shoot off fireworks. It'll go to the Supreme Court, and then you'll have your answer. So that pretty much what became of this meeting is that the cities and counties are basically left out in the cold. They can pass all the rules they want, and they're not going to mean anything until this gets decided, in the court system.
Which raises a real question about local control. So thank you, Chief. Is there any questions for Chief Miller?
Chief, did you just say that minors and younger children are going to be able to buy fireworks? Is that where they're heading with this?
That section of the law they wrote in September has been completely deleted. There's nothing in there that says if a 5-year-old kid wants to go up and fire fireworks, they're going to be allowed to do it, as long as they have adult supervision.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes that's not the best.
I hear you. Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Item E, is there anyone in the audience that wants to comment on the agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Police recommendation regarding the implementation of 12-hour shifts for patrol officers and sergeants. Recommendation, approve the delay in the implementation of 12-hour shifts to no sooner than July 1, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any comments, Chief?
I've just got the discussion part here. The council has previously discussed the implementation of a 12-hour shift for patrol officers. Initially, it was determined that the 12-hour shift should be implemented within 60 days. After lengthy discussions with the police union, a preliminary letter of understanding was drafted, resulting in the implementation by January 1st of 2018. However, on November 21st, 2017, the union voted to delay the implementation of the 12-hour shifts until July of 2018 to ensure the viability of the change and ensure staffing levels are sufficient for the success of this change. Staff is seeking approval for the delay in implementation until no sooner than July 1st, 2018, depending on staffing levels at that time.
Go ahead, Mark.
Start. I'm going to apologize in advance because I know some of this stuff we've probably talked about in the past. Looking forward to the budget, the next budget cycle, we're still budgeting for 42 officers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Of that, how many of them are going to be patrol officers?
All of them will be. The officers that you approved at the meeting in September?
Right.
Those are going to be patrol officers.
Right. So that'll give us a staff of what, 14? Is that right? Patrol officers?
Yes, and Jeff's in there a little bit, so he counts part of the time, but 14, hopefully about 18 officers.
Okay. So how many do we have right now?
34. I'm approved at 38. I've got 3 in the academy starting today, and then we have the one going on military leave.
Okay. So if nothing changes, aside from the 3 coming on roughly July 1st, will that put us in a position at that point? Again, if nobody left, would that put us at the point where?
That's a point of contention between myself and the union. I think it's still going to be very tough to do that, but we'll do our best to make it work.
Okay, so moving on, I believe I saw an advertisement, so correct me if I'm wrong on this. We have an advertisement out right now for taking applications.
We just started today, sir. Yes.
Okay, so that means that the current civil service list has been exhausted and we're.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I know that you can only do interviews when you have applicants. How many positions in a perfect world are you looking to fill with this current round of advertising?
4 positions.
4 positions. Okay. So my next question, and this might lend itself kind of to what we're talking about with the gentleman that we just brought on that we really can't send to the academy, and knowing that we have pretty consistent attrition. Do we have anything in place for succession planning for these officers as they're moving on in the way of making sure that we don't have voids for 6 months, a year out? And the reason that I'm asking, we've got this one guy that we're going to lose for a year. And more than likely, we all know the reality is we're probably going to lose somebody in that year that's going to make this whole July 1st thing a heck of a lot harder to implement. How do we combat that for the next year? Probably longer than a year, because then we're going to have this fella come back and do police academy whenever that's available. We're probably going to have somebody leave in that time frame. So do we have a solid plan in place as a community to make sure that we don't have those holes? Because we're not paying a salary to this person just because we've got the person there, but we don't have the salary there. So I mean, I guess the point that I'm getting at is we wouldn't if we were all business people, we wouldn't run a business like that. So what are we doing to make sure that we don't have that problem going forward?
We don't have a plan. What it involves is money. When I know an officer is going to retire in 6 months, I cannot replace him until the day he retires. We've talked about that in the past. I think it's just the way our budget works. I can't hire someone to replace an officer until that officer's last day.
And that makes perfect sense. And maybe this is more of a question to Administrator Morris than to you. That makes perfect sense when we're paying out the salary to somebody. But when we're not paying out the salary, then we've basically we're just shortchanging the staff in that time frame.
Well, I can say that like when I know someone's going to retire, we start the process of doing the advertising
Sure.
and the testing and all that, but still I can't get that person on the books. And where those voids occur, they only have 2 academies a year. So if it's really the timing, you've got to have your timing right down to the week, and that's pretty tough to do. Especially when I know there's officers out there that are looking for other jobs, they're probably going to get hired. They may even tell me, hey, I may be leaving in 3 months, but it's no guarantee. You got to keep in mind that it costs us around $3,000 just to advertise for that position. So it is difficult, and it's expensive to keep a current list.
Understood. But like I said, where I was going with that wasn't necessarily with somebody that we're actually paying. It's the person that we're not paying.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just comment on that briefly, and I would agree with what the chief said about there isn't a succession plan for police officers. You keep them as long as you can. They move on to other departments, other assignments. They receive promotions. So there really isn't such thing as a succession plan. My opinion, based on the conversation we've had on this topic, and it's a good topic since this past spring, Chief, I just feel, and I share this with council, I hope this works. I think it's aspirational at this point. I really do. Because when you bring these officers on, not only do you have that longer training period that you have to adhere to, but the officers, as we've seen in previous instances and will likely continue, were somewhat of a training ground. Even Mr. Thomas, who's the union representative, those are his words, not mine, but I think that's somewhat emblematic of what we're faced with. From a budgetary standpoint, we'll staff that up as well as we can. I would also ask council to put in context, though, the email that was sent out today and some of the challenges that are faced at the general fund right now. You're looking at a projected deficit of about $392,000, and the lion's share of our expenses are in personnel. There will be areas where we will look to make cuts. Councilman Roy, I shared some of those with you and some other departments. Some that we've already made, eliminating 3 full-time positions. There will be more. But I think not necessarily from a budgetary standpoint, but I even think from a hiring standpoint, and this is the chief's world, not mine, that is not going to be an easy road to hoe to completely have this fully staffed at its optimal level. It's going to be difficult. We will strive to do that. The chief has dedicated himself to that. But I just want to be clear that it won't be foot dragging that is slowing this down. It will be our ability to attract and retain and maintain officers.
Well, and that was kind of my point, is making sure that we have everything in place. That way we don't get behind the 8 ball, because we've gotten behind the 8 ball. Not to anybody in particular's fault. We've just gotten behind the 8 ball on it, and I really don't want to see that happen again. So that's why the question of what are we doing looking into the future, because we already know that we've got one position that's out about 1.5 years now. So.
But again, Chief, I don't want to interrupt Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I should ask for your permission to speak. But the Chief, hopefully Chief McAndrew can put in context then the process of, obviously, when you hire someone, when they come on board, and the period of time that you have them. As you just said, the civil service exam is exhausted. So I'm not blaming this on the bureaucracy, but you have to advertise for these and find the most qualified candidates you can get and hope that you can hang on to them.
Right, correct. The people, the 3 that went to the academy today, they'll be out in around July, and hopefully be able to answer calls at that time. The next round, they should be out around the end of the year, to where they're actually counted as an officer and they're out answering calls. I do want to clarify something on the succession planning. I don't want you to think that we don't look at that. It's a little bit tougher to do succession planning for officers. However, we have officers on our sergeant's list and my lieutenants right now. I'm already planning my successor with my lieutenants. There's classes at the academy that we send our lieutenants to, and we make it available to them. It's called 5-Star Leadership, and it's for the next executives that will come in to replace me. And so we make sure that they get to that type of training. Our sergeants, we send to Kansas City to a managing police discipline school, this excellent school. So we do succession planning there. Challenges that we have right now with succession planning, we've just lost people, civilian staff over the years. For instance, our datacom supervisor, she does what she does, and she's the only person that knows what she does. And it's going to be difficult when she leaves because we don't have any overlap at all between her and, if you know Lynn Dively, our records clerk. She's our only one records person we have. So there's none of that overlap anymore, where if she would go out the door, somebody could kind of slide in and take her place. So it's a real challenge, but we are attempting to do the succession planning.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Victor?
Yeah, I guess the process that City Administrator Morris spoke of is what concerns me the most. You know, it's sort of like we're trying to hit a moving dartboard, and by saying July 1st, you know, legislatively, we've already had a lot of meetings and made some decisions, but I guess it just makes me wonder, how do we know that by July that this is going to be possible? And the 12-hour shifts is predicated on a certain number of officers. And, you know, how are the ones that have been hanging in there, you know, and 6 more months out, we lose some of those folks, then it could be possible that the process could dictate the fact that July 1st might not even be a feasible reality.
So you want Administrator Morris, or do you want Chief to respond to that?
I think you're correct. That's we're planning for it, but I don't know who's going to fall this winter out doing snow parking tickets and break an arm. You know, the last 2 years, we lost one for a shoulder injury on the ice. We lost Jeff Williams for quite a while when he broke his arm. So it really is throwing darts at it, because you just don't know who's going to become ill and come down with a serious illness. And in July, around June, we'll start evaluating whether we're going to be able to go to the 12-hour shifts. It's really tough.
Yeah, I guess that's my concern, is that if we get to July 1st and we have, you know, less people or the same amount of people than the people that have been, you know, hanging in there and looking forward to having 12-hour shifts and more time with their families, then we could lose more then.
Yeah, and that is a concern. I would say that the officers, I think, as we got closer to the date and really started taking a harder look at things, realized that we were not in the position to go to 12-hour shifts. I myself, I know Joni, and I know the city administrator have all said, you don't have the people to do it. And we've met with the union several times and discussed this. And I think they just thought, you know, dang the torpedoes, we're just going to go with this. But as it got closer and closer, I think people started realizing that there's no way that we could actually fill our shifts in the 12 hours. So I think that they're willing to hang in there. I think that they're a cohesive group. I think that for the most part, they're going to hang in there, and they can see this coming down the road, that eventually we're going to get there. We're really excited about getting the 3 in the academy today. We're a little bit not happy with losing one of the 4. But we know that we're advertising as of today, and in April, hopefully we'll get a good list. I like that we're going to be advertising and testing in the spring. That's when we have our best candidates are coming out of college and they're ready to go. So I hope that we'll have a really good pool of people to pick from, and we'll get those 4. Surely out of the 7, we're going to have 4 or 5 that are going to make it through the whole process and be out on the street answering calls. I think we'll be okay, but there's no guarantees with any of this.
And we totally understand that there has to be, you know, a certain number of officers for that to happen. So it's sort of out of our hands up here, and we'll trust that everything possible is going to be done to try to make that happen. Thanks, Chief.
Matt?
I got a quick question here and a comment. I think I want to make sure that we're all, and I'm speaking on behalf of the council here, but we don't want to put a policy in place or have you do something that's going to fail or it's going to put them in jeopardy or the department. So going forward, this council wants it put in place when it's able to be. And so I don't want any more discussion on, foot dragging and all this, because I think we all want it to work. And I know that there's other departments that do have 12-hour shifts and they have the same issues we do. They have, officers leaving for other towns that pay more money. They have people and officers that fall and get hurt. I know those are things that happen in any department. But going back real quick, and then we'll move on here on the shift, as you have it set out now for 12 hours. How many officers, patrol officers do you have, and then how many sergeants will be on each shift?
Okay, that's a difficult one. The way we had it set up to, if it was going to go on this month,
Right.
we had on day shift 3 officers on each of our units and 3 sergeants for days. It'd be 1 sergeant for each unit and then a floating sergeant. And then on nights, I think we had 4 officers on each unit and then the same 3 sergeants 4 nights. It'd be 1 sergeant to each unit and then a floating sergeant. Now, I asked for the 2 sergeants because when we were looking at when we met, we saw that we could cut down on overtime by making 2 more sergeants. So there's 2 sergeants for each unit. But hopefully we'll have more than that. I know we've talked a lot about Marshalltown. We have half to less than half of what Marshalltown has for employees on patrol. So that's where we're at. We're just too short.
So say we, like Councilman Strebe mentioned, it's a moving number. We have officers leaving, coming on. So say at the appropriate time when we have the appropriate amount of staff and we do transition to 12-hour shifts, say we lose 3. All of a sudden they've accepted jobs. Do we have a plan on how do sergeants fill those patrol positions until that hiring can be done? Because that could be somewhat of a stopgap measure, I guess. Or how do you think that might work? Because that's a legitimate issue.
Yeah, that's the advantage of having those 2 extra sergeants is because they can be sergeants and patrolmen. Right now, our sergeants are patrolmen. That's one issue that I have with our sergeants right now. My sergeants are supposed to be supervisors of the shift. But what's happening is because we're so short, they're going out and just answering their own calls. They're not showing up at the calls where the officers are at and making sure that everything's being done in the right manner.
I see.
They're just coming in at the end of the shift and going, what'd you guys do tonight? Because we're busy and they're just answering calls. So
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So these extra sergeants will help with that if we get to that number. Will we able to
they're
have this?
already doing that. My sergeants don't just sit in the office
No, I
and do
know.
nothing. They're out answering calls
Michael.
and supervising. So yeah.
Right.
For instance, if we've got 3 officers on this day unit and 2 sergeants working, I can have one of those officers take off and I have to pay overtime because that sergeant is counted as patrolman. And that's how we do it now also.
But with this addition of sergeants, will that allow you to do some more supervisory things like, you're saying they're answering their own calls? Would this floating sergeant be able to take up some of those duties as a supervisor rather than someone running around taking the calls?
Yes.
That would help.
If we promote the 2 sergeants also, we'll get rid of that floating sergeant.
Okay.
Some departments, they wanted to go to 12-hour shifts, so they did the floating thing. But from talking to them, they don't really care for that because that floating sergeant never knows what his schedule is going to be.
Right.
Sergeant on this unit takes off, he's got to cover that day, and then the next day another sergeant takes off. It's not a real fun position to be in.
Thank you.
I think it'd be good for the record just to share, Joni gave this to us this afternoon. This is from John Thomas, who represents the police union. Please share with the city council our appreciation and understanding for the need to delay the implementation of the 12-hour schedule until such time manpower will allow this schedule to be successful. And I think that should be, if you didn't get a chance to see that, everybody needs to know that they're supporting this as a good policy, and we're trying to work together to get this done in a successful manner. So we appreciate that. All right, there's a motion on the floor and a second to approve the delay in the implementation of 12-hour shifts to no sooner than July 1st, 2018. Are you ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ottumwa Public Safety Advisory Board recommendations. Recommendation, approve the December 18th, 2017 Ottumwa Public Safety Advisory Board recommendations.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening, Larry. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
We had an individual that was concerned with Highway 63 by Tractor Supply and turning off to the industrial park. He had researched the number of accidents involved in this area and had stated that there was 20 accidents over a number of years. He said his son had had an accident and he was concerned with the design. What we had notified him of was the fact that there is a current study taking place in order to try to improve the access back to the industrial park. The study was a grant award and a joint effort with the DOT to look and review the current status. That has been an interesting intersection just based on its design and problems that you would encounter if you was trying to do that design today. The recommendation was, since the engineering study is underway, would be wait until that study is completed, review some of the design proposals that are being put together, and then go back and review it and then respond to this individual. Item 2 was an individual that lives on Ogden Street. He would like to know if a no parking sign could be placed on the north side of the road. One of the things that we do when that occurs, this is a street that is 2 blocks long, we do poll the individuals that live on that street. We review how many driveways are off of the street, how homes access that street. It is eligible for parking on just one side because of its narrow width. It averages 20 feet. There is some areas it's slightly less than that. When we get those surveys back from all the homeowners, then we will meet again and make a decision on which side. We do have a few of those that have returned to date, but not all of them. So that motion was to basically table this until that survey is back. We had an individual that lives on North Ash Street. He had requested if the no parking sign could be removed from the west side of the 1800 block. We reviewed that, which is in basically the Vogel-Van Ness area. We looked at that. That was originally installed when the hospital was active to allow traffic, easier access to that main front entrance that lines up with Vogel. We did recommend the removal of that without the hospital in that location. So that will be done. We also had an individual, and this one comes up every few years, the crosswalk on Market Street at the 3rd Street intersection, kind of the north side. We've looked at different things over the years. Because of the grade and the difficulty that we do have, especially in the winter, with slick streets, we have a lot of trouble now with cars making it from 3rd up to 4th, and even if they stop at 4th, on certain days, they will not be able to get going again. We had looked at different types of lighting, overhead lighting, crosswalks. I guess our recommendation on this one was to deny that request. The traveling public is supposed to yield for pedestrians, but we do have a problem with people doing kind of a Texas stop when they're southbound on Market. They do roll through that. That could become a possibility of an enforcement issue. Of course, you have to be there when they do it. So our recommendation on that is not to approve any change at that intersection. We had a business owner on the 100 block of East Main request with the change in how we reconfigured the alley, the canteen alley, to do a 15-minute parking spot on Main Street. We have done that before, so we made a recommendation that that should be approved. The one thing that I like to point out is the parking in the downtown area. It is something that is flexible in a sense, depending on who occupies the building at the time. If their needs change because their business change, we do recognize that and we do change things. That's nothing to say that this will not change back in 2 years. But again, we try to support the business with things that we think will help in that area. That would be a 15-minute loading, unloading for all businesses. It's not reserved for any one in particular. But that is a recommendation that we made to approve that request. We had a group of people, but an individual spokesman from the 1967 class that had went to Walsh High School. They would like to rename the street, McCarroll Street, after Walsh. One of the things, and then install, if possible, a monument dedicated to the school site. The motion was to deny this request. The reasoning behind that was this requires all residents in the area to change their mailing addresses, credit cards, billing, everything else. And we really felt that, you know, if you wanted to do a dedication, that they should contact the Ottumwa school systems and work with them and actually put some sort of monument on site if that's what they'd like to do. So we denied that request and recommended they contact the school directly. Chief, you want to hit this one?
Item 7 at the Safety Advisory Board was the discussion setting the speed on the red speed vehicle. James Jackson made a motion recommending lowering the minimum speed setting over the posted speed limit for the red speed vehicle to 8 miles per hour in school zones and 10 miles per hour in all other areas of the city. Sandy Teague seconded and the motion carried.
Okay, so we basically have a motion to approve the complete recommendations. Are there any questions or comments for Larry or Chief?
Your Honor, and
Go
Chief,
ahead.
thank you. On item number 7, if we approve all these recommendations, I'm assuming that that new speed setting on the red speed camera would go into effect immediately? Or how does that work?
That would be immediately, yes.
Okay. Would there be any, I mean, I guess I just want to make sure that the public's aware of that change, just, you know, in the blink of an eye. Sometimes it's nice to get a little bit of information out there. Hopefully we could put something on our Go TV maybe.
Well, I see we have media present. They could help us with that too.
Sounds good. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Holly?
Oh yeah, I had just a couple for Larry. For item number 4, the crosswalk. Maybe you talked about it at the meeting, but I was just curious if there had been any discussion on trying to put a sign in the median for some traffic calming on that crosswalk. I know I see people about running people over in the crosswalk all the time. So I wasn't sure if I've seen some communities just doing those. It goes in the median and it's just a little metal sign that says pedestrian crosswalk yield, something like that, just to see if that might help bring some notice to that crosswalk.
Well, typically we would try, if it's not a school district that's a temporary sign in and out, we like to mount those in some sort of raised medium, if possible, to try to prevent the number of times we're down replacing it. To me, I'm not sure exactly if one complaint every couple years is enough or sufficient enough to start changing traffic control around town. There's other intersections that also kind of follow this suit. So we try to stick to design standards.
And I was on item number 5. I'm not against the parking spot, but I was just wondering what the committee thought about kind of how this might play into the parking study that's coming about that Main Street Ottumwa is doing and the recommendations that are going to get presented in probably the next month or so with that.
Unsure because we haven't seen any of that information. It would be interesting to review that to see. Most of these parking conditions downtown evolve over time. I know a lot of times we'll have a group come in and look at this and we'll look at their recommendations. But again, most parking situations downtown has evolved, you know, if it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour, over time as the business is demanded in that area.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so voting on this, we're including the entire package. Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Approve the purchase of 15 Panasonic Toughbook computers from toughruggedlaptops.com, the amount of $20,303.62. Recommendation, approve the purchase.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening again, Chief. Go ahead.
The Toughbook computers are used in the patrol vehicles. They are utilized to access the Iowa system that provides driver information, vehicle registration, and warrant information. They also are used for vehicle location, dispatch communication via MOC. These will be replacing current computers that were purchased in October of 2010. This is part of the funding through the CIP. It's a budgeted item. I have Edward Wilson here if you have any questions about these Toughbooks also. He's gone out and got these prices for us. I think the CIP originally started out with 10 Toughbook computers, and he's got us a good price to where we're going to be able to obtain 15.
Any questions for the chief? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 722 Baker. I received no objections on this item.
Is there a motion? No, Jody, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city received an offer of $250 from Sean Skinner for a vacant lot at 722 Baker, and Mr. Skinner lives next door at 802 Baker. He wants to use the lot as green space, and the lot is being sold with the understanding that the city will retain an easement across the front of the lot for a 60-inch sanitary sewer line.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to address this item, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Resolution number 1, 2018, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 722 Baker to Sean Skinner for the sum of $250. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 1, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation is presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, excuse me.
Just one question on that, my apologies. Jody, we've talked about this before, about the green space that we create and we designate, but
Right.
if I have this correctly, based on conversations we've had previously, the city really doesn't enforce that, do we?
As far as,
I say I'm going to build I'm going to have this green space and then I put a trailer on it, or I just ignore it and do nothing with it. Does the city do anything? I know in my previous community, when we allowed people to have green spaces, we were pretty forthright with code enforcement anyway, about making sure it was maintained. Is that something that we could look into possibly doing in the future?
we do require them to maintain it. Of course, they have to keep the grass under 10 inches. And if they decide in the future that they want it to be something other than green space, then they can construct anything that their zoning classification permits. In some cases, they have to get a variance.
And not to take this conversation in great degree further, and your point is well taken, but if someone has a designation or a green space, and let's say not only they're not maintain it, let's just say for the sake of discussion, they put bicycles on it and other pieces of equipment. At that point then, does the city notify them, you receive this, utilize it as green space, and you're not doing that?
Well, we would only notify them if they were actually in violation of some nuisance code or zoning code.
Right.
If they wanted to put a swing set on it, for instance, if they wanted to park their bicycles on it, no, we would not say that that's a violation of the green space designation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Okay, any other questions for Joe? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 308 North Graves. I've received no objections on this item.
Okay, go ahead, Jody.
Thank you, Mayor. Phil Peniston offered the city $500 for a vacant lot at 308 North Graves, and Mr. Peniston also lives next door to this lot. He wants to use it as yard space or green space. This resolution will accept his offer, and the property will be transferred by quitclaim deed, with the buyer paying all the costs of conveyance.
This is also a public hearing, so if there's anyone that wants to address this, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Resolution number 2, 2018, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 308 North Graves to Phil Peniston for the sum of $500. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 2, 2018.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Resolution number 5, 2018, approving change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete for the Ray Street Culvert Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 5, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening, Larry. Go ahead.
Ray Street Bridge over the Jefferson Drainage Ditch was structurally deficient and had a load rating of 8 tons. This project consists of replacing the bridge with twin 8x6 box culverts with a separate RFP. Will be used for bidding PCC surface installation in 2018. The project was awarded March 21st of 2017 in the amount of $212,998 to Iowa Bridge and Culvert, and they've completed the above referenced work according to the plans and specifications. This will approve change order 1 and authorize payment and release of all retainages. The new contract amount with a reduced quantity of $3,154 will make the new contract amount $209,844.40.
Any questions for Larry? Okay, hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Resolution number 6, 2018, approving change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete for the Johnson Avenue Reconstruction Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 6, 2018.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
This project consists of the complete reconstruction of approximately 580 linear feet of Johnson Avenue between Albee Road and Ashbury Avenue, including the intersection of Redwood Village Drive. The project was awarded May 30th, 2017 at the City Council meeting in the amount of $163,648.50 to DC Construction of Dowds, Iowa. The above work has been completed according to the plans and specifications, and this will approve change order 1 and authorize payment and release of all retainage. I'm going to run a PowerPoint and show you some of the additional work of unsuitable fill and placing a 3-inch rock base. And then after setting grade, an existing trench retaining wall failed and required replacement. That's just the financials. About half of this street ended up having unsuitable fill, which basically means you can't reach compaction. It's kind of a fat clay. And again, we ended up coring out, bringing in a 3-inch rock and then putting a choke stone on top. What you see there is some geogrid that helps stabilize that base and will keep that from cracking and settling as quick. Here's an existing retaining wall. Unfortunately, sometime in the past when they developed that trailer court, they give away quite a bit of our right-of-way in this area. So our right-of-way was actually just right behind this retaining wall. By the time you remove your pavement, you core out in order to get down to your base, core out enough to put your rock base in. You end up cutting several feet. This wall ended up being a very shallow trench wall. I'm going to guess when they built this garage that they come in and put this in just to hold the area between the garage and here. We were hoping to be able to maintain that by sliding the road a little bit. It didn't work, so we were forced to come back in and put in a retaining wall in order to support this structure. And you can see some of the added costs in the spreadsheet. So that's really it. I just wanted to kind of cover some of the major items that increase this project cost. The original contract amount, again, was $163,648.50. The change order is for $28,439.39, making a new contract amount of $192,087.89. So the final amount due is $38,466.15.
Any questions for Larry? I think it's always good to have a visual and be able to see those things, Larry. Thank you. Ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Resolution number 7, 2018, approving change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete for the 2017 Sanitary Utility Access Program. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 7, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
This project was to replace sanitary utility accesses in the existing sanitary sewer lines and associated patchwork. Manholes were replaced at locations that had either limited access points or problems prone to plugging, causing increased cleaning maintenance. On East Main, we encountered a collapsed line that required sewer line to be replaced across 2nd Street at Cass Street. When the work was completed, the street required additional patching. The original contract amount was $49,900. Change order with all the additional work on Cass added $30,376.29 for a new contract amount of $80,276.29.
Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Resolution number 8, 2018, awarding the contract for the Quiet Zone project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 8, 2018.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
This project will complete the installation of raised center medians on the remaining at-grade crossings at the intersection of Burlington Northern and Santa Fe on the following intersections: Vine Street, Green Street, Kitterman Avenue, and Clay Street. Bids were received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on December 13th, 2017 at 2 p.m. 12 sets of plans were distributed and 5 bids were received. The low bidder is Phi Excavating, Inc. of Sperry, Iowa, in the amount of $275,503.55. We did attach the plan holders list, and the funding source is Legacy Foundation. I will point out that we bid this earlier and we did not receive any bids. Some of the comments that have been made that we've shared with Legacy and other groups, there's a lot of difficulty working with the railroad as far as timing for the flaggers. We've had different contractors specifically talk about jobs that should take a half a day end up taking several days. So they add a lot of money into these type of projects in order to work within the railroad right away, unfortunately. It has been a developing thing over the last 20 years, and it's become even more difficult over time.
Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're getting to the end of our agenda here. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to address the council on any business for the city? Okay. A couple things, just I handed out tonight a list of committee assignments, and I've already made some changes thanks to the comments of Councilman Rowland and Dalby. I'll get that corrected and redistribute that. And these are just suggestions. If there's something you want to particularly get involved with, let us know and we'll try to accommodate your desire. Secondly, too, we're going to continue. Amanda put together a very nice handbook for the newly elected people, and we're following the same procedural things for council meetings that was established back on Resolution 204, 2015, and we'll continue to do that unless you give me some direction that you want to do something different. And last but not least, I did ask for any comments from council people about goals and directions for the city in 2018-19. So please get those back to me and we'll have some further discussion at one of our future meetings. There's nothing of critical nature, but we want to get that finalized and get that on our agenda. So any other business from council people? Anything that you want us to consider or think about? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Berg.
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you. It's 6:44.